Hello dear viewers, Andrew Lapamardo, and today we're talking about 12 darkest and well-built villains of Castlevania. If you're into anime, you just cannot possibly miss out on Castlevania. No, we are not talking about the video game here. We are stressing on Netflix's Castlevania anime series. Okay, it is true that this American anime-influenced adult animated dark fantasy action television series initially began as a loose adaptation of Konami's Japanese video game series, also called Castlevania. But fans who have streamed it online will know that the series has successfully been able to construct a world of its own, backed by a remarkable work of animation and some riveting character dynamics, of course. Spanning across 4 seasons with 32 very exciting episodes, Warren Ellis's Castlevania has been a commercial as well as critical success. Well, one of the primary reasons why the series has been such a hit is solely because of the characters on display, and by characters, we are mostly inclined towards the villains who are featured here. While full credits have to be given to the main antagonist of the series, Dracula, Castlevania does have a lot more to offer. So in today's video, we are going to take a close look into 12 of the darkest and most well-built villains of the series. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
I am Vlad Dracula Tepesh, and I have had enough!
Dracula. Well, of course we have Dracula topping this list because let's get one thing straight right away with this legendary antagonist here. Count Vlad Dracula Tempest, also known as Dracula, has appeared as the all-embracing villain of the first season, the primary villain of the second season, the posthumous imposing villain of the third season, and as the principal character in the fourth and final season. Mind you, his character in the anime series is a lot different than his original video game character. He is undeniably the toughest and the wittiest of all the vampires. The fact that he regarded himself as the most powerful being, one that was way superior than humans, made him quite indifferent towards them. The right way to describe this villain here would be by pointing towards the fact that he took immense pride in himself. The character of Dracula would hardly hesitate when it comes to crushing people, especially people who are against him. Besides slaughtering them in the most vicious manner, he would even go to the extent of just leaving their bodies impaled. Speaking of his story, it is quite tragic. His human wife Lisa was executed, burned at the stake to be more precise, after falsely being accused of witchcraft. Fueled by the romantic rage, he deeply started resenting humanity, and was further enraged post-learning that the bishop who ordered the execution simply denied his existence. This is precisely when Dracula declared that he would take everything from the people of Wallachia, and leave no trace of their existence. Holding every human being accountable for the death of his wife, he went on a revenge quest and began his war of extermination against the human race, setting free an entire army of hell. He had accepted his future eternity of endless hatred. In fact, his plans of genocide were practically in order for him to join his wife in the afterlife. The perks of being the oldest immortal in history gave him phenomenally formidable powers, such as having supernatural strength. It is very easy for him to crush solid stones with just his hands. Killing humans and even vampires, for that matter, is exceedingly easy thing for him to do. Even critically injuring his superhumanly strong Dampier son, Alucard, seemed like a piece of cake to him. Next comes the fact that he is capable of moving at great speeds, very easily scale down walls, evade numerous arrows thrown at him from countless angles, dodge sword attacks, and return back blows. All of this in spite of having quite the size. Then comes his supernatural durability, resilience, stamina, his command over vampires, and the Night Horde, and the fact that he is extremely well versed with magic. His other abilities include teleportation, astral projection, levitation, and elemental control, such as pyrokinesis, aerokinesis, and electrokinesis. Let's not forget his mastery in martial combat, or possibly disregard his genius-level intellect. Dracula, conclusively, happens to be one of the most memorable villains of Castlevania, and there are no second thoughts about it.
And you people all took my treasure from me.
Death. As the name suggests, the character of Death happens to be an ancient elemental spirit, one who has been existing right from the beginning of time. His primary task is to feed on the death of all living beings. He was apparently quite disgruntled with the frequency of the usual death occurring in the world, so it goes without saying that he was absolutely overjoyed when he learned about Dracula's plans of mass murder. So much so that this sadistic death god literally sought to revive Dracula, just so he could continue devouring from his bloodbath. In fact, you would be surprised to know that he calculatingly tried to resurrect Dracula and his wife in a single body, being completely aware that the experience would literally drive them insane and turn them into his perfect killing machine. Although he is based off the character from the video game, there is a difference to his version in the anime series.
Is there a point to this? Are you dictating your fucking obituary to me, Belmont?
Unlike the video game, he isn't the Grim Reaper, but as mentioned before, here he is an elemental spirit. Death gets to consume every single time a life ends. And mind you, the more he devours, the more powerful he becomes. Since he has been feeding for literally ages now, he is supreme enough to control the gateway between two dimensions, the infinite corridor, to be more specific. If you are wondering what he really looks like, here, let us help you out. He is a large skeletal creature with a skull head that has bony spikes pointing towards the upward direction. This looks more like a crown. He has muscles on his upper arms, torso, and even hands, and only dons minute pieces of clothing, some over his shoulders, and some covering his lower half. He has also been one of the most dreaded deputies in the ranks of Dracula, and when needed, he can grow into a gigantic size. One who is strong enough to create explosions simply by hitting his palm on the ground. At times, from being an equivalent to Dracula to appearing even stronger in the final showdown. His character is easily categorized as the main villain of the fourth and final season. Also, Death, unlike his character in the video game, holds no loyalty to Dracula and only considers him as a tool to gain benefits out of his plan of genocide. Speaking of his personality, he is cold, indifferent, self-centered, imposing, and has no respect for anyone.
My treasure, you gulping little shit.
He can be exceedingly fake and intimidate people into submission all at the same time. Also, he is very sly and manipulative. He would not really show his true colors just like that. All he gives a damn about is arranging as many deaths as possible because that is what makes him break free from all things that confine him and makes him become the one and only. For him, the concept of one is either to be killed for nourishment or deployed for the fulfillment of his end. Carmilla. If there happens to be a definition of a boss lady, that'd be Carmilla for sure. One who prefers to have human blood in a wine glass, and at the same time thrash her subordinates left, right, and center. Serving as the secondary antagonist of the second and fourth season, and as the primary villain of the third season, this power-hungry vampire can be refined, poised, and royal, as well as be distrustful and a complete misandrist to the whole point of obsession. She is also self-centered, opportunistic, arrogant, full of lust, bossy, and cowardly.
I'm making myself clear now. This is your war council, my lord?
Mind you, she is very wily, very ambitious, has this twisted dark sense of humor with a panache for violence, and often overestimates herself, to the extent that she thinks she can never go wrong. Oh, she is utterly vicious, sadistic, loves to fight with rage, and simply revels in beating up targets that are helpless. Imagine someone who considers human beings as a source of food and desires vampires to take over the world. That's not even all. She wants the throne of Dracula, and finds him incapable of ruling. The fact that she was able to twist the affairs of Dracula's council, plant doubts amongst them, turned many allies of Dracula against him, and also put up a show of her being absolutely loyal to him at the same time, shows how politically skilled she actually is. She simply loathed the fact that Dracula actually loved his wife, and did not use her as a pet or, say, sex slave like she would have. The character of Carmilla's obsession on the concept of conquest makes her the new definition of evil. She is very fast, agile, strong, and is seen riding a humongous demonic skull. She possesses a blood-red scimitar, and that's not even the best part. The highlight happens to be her blending herself with flows of lightning to enhance her speed and might. How cool is that, right? Talking about her appearance, her character boasts icy blue eyes, crimson red and long straight white mane. She is mostly seen donning a black and crimson red ombre dress that features golden shoulder plates along with heels, hinting to the fact that she is uber chic. In case you were wondering about her past, not much is disclosed, except for what she has to say about it. According to her, she became one of the brides of her sire, who later became mad and cruel to the point that he abused her as a sex slave. Of course, Carmilla ended up killing him. It was after that she took over the Austrian domain of Styria, providing a sense of purpose as well as goal to her council of sisters and, in due course, becoming their leader. Isaac. Say hello to Dracula's closest follower, one who also happens to be a misanthropic devil forge master assisting his master in his attempted mass murder of humanity. So much so that he literally creates his own army to avenge the death of Dracula. Contrary to his exaggerated video game version, Isaac in the animated series appears as a tall, bald black male. He has 2 scars on the side of his head, and unlike his video game counterpart, he does not have any tattoos. His character here is shown as someone who is exceedingly faithful to Dracula. He is reserved, calm, and at the same time, disturbingly ruthless. Now comes the part where his character will literally send chills down your spines. Isaac is more of a misanthropic necromancer who can make use of his Forge Master powers thanks to the black dagger that he possesses. He is quite capable of turning corpses into the undead and numerous creatures of all sizes, supremacies, and sentience. Just a single fatal stab will do the trick. He is malefic in nature, boasting exceptional fighting skills and an unrivaled level of pain tolerance. He has an army of horrors at his command, so know that this is not an easy task to stop him, especially with one crossing paths with him. You will be surprised to know that he is a Sufi Muslim, one who believes in the existence of God, but is also quite delusional to think that clearing hell is his will. Isaac is of the opinion that it is Dracula who will purify the world, and thereby often ends up beating himself as an act of atonement. For those who are wondering why he is so devoted to Dracula, well, it was Dracula who treated him with compassion and valued him as a person.
And you saved me. I did.
So, one can imagine the extents he would go to take down those accountable for the death of Dracula. This also includes him picking up his master's task of genocide. But, then again, it is also these prosecutions that eventually made him reassess his beliefs and search for a whole new path. In due course, he is finally able to find peace.
Dantalion Presido.
Hector. Voiced by the English actor Theo James, Hector appears as a primary anti-villain and also as one of Dracula's 2 devil forge masters alongside Isaac. So, besides having the power to resurrect corpses effortlessly, create night creatures, and summon demons, this former general in Dracula's army served him by building him his army and aiding his master in his war against humanity. But Hector's susceptible, gullible nature has been the main reason for his downfall. It is precisely what the cunning and scheming Carmilla took advantage of and had him go against his very master.
And Dracula himself clearly agrees. He listens to you.
Post the very death of Dracula, Carmilla deceived Hector and took him as prisoner in her castle in Styria, with the manipulative femme fatale Lenore, who was one of the 3 vampires that ruled Styria alongside Carmilla as the Council of Sisters, feigning an interest or, in other words, tricking and seducing the imprisoned Hector. The latter got exploited yet again, only this time way further than before. He became her slave, and not just any slave, but someone who could not deceive or defy her. There is no denying that the Council of Sisters had him assigned into putting together an army for them, one that they could use to defeat and rule the world.
Vampires and sisters, we have a scheme!
Morana and Strega. They were not just immortal lovers ruling over the kingdom of Styria, but they were also 2 of the 4 vampire women to have established the Council of Sisters. Strega was a deadly warrior, one who just loved initiating war against the rivals of Styria, and was also in charge of leading the armies of her kingdom more like a commander. Morana, on the other hand, was more inclined towards being the strategist and serving a more intellectual role. They were more than often made to participate in the conniving plots of Carmilla, their vampire sister, who wished to take over the world and simultaneously alter the status quo in the process.
Vampires and sisters.
It should come as no surprise to you when we tell you that their core goal was to construct a massive feeding ground out of Wallachia, and with certain powers such as immortality, mastery in swordsmanship, superhuman speed, as well as strength, you know the kind of impact these lovers are bound to leave. There are no second thoughts about the fact that post the death of Dracula, it was Carmilla who came back to her castle with numerous plans of domination, but it is solely up to Strega and Morana to bring them to execution by making use of their skills to the best of their capability. One has every reason to watch out for these supporting villains of Castlevania and not make the mistake of taking them lightly.
My fucking throat.
Lenore. There is a high chance of words falling short, especially when it comes to describing this major villain here. While most considered her as the softest of the Vampire Queen quartet, that's where they made their mistake. Please don't go by her appearance. It is true that she was a beauty to look at, especially with those tinted cheeks of hers, and that long ginger red hair, but her true vampiric nature had her red eyes glowing with nothing but spite. Her ears oddly pointed, and let's not even talk about the sharp fangs. While on the surface, she did appear well-mannered, thoughtful, and understanding, Lenore was equally wicked, crafty, and persuasive underneath, to the whole extent of making others do the council's bidding. For instance, the unabridged act of bringing the imprisoned Hector food and clothes was nothing short but a part of her master's strategy. The manipulative femme fatale was more than successful in getting what she wanted out of him. That includes seducing him to have sex, and more importantly, binding him with a control ring that ensured Hector as well as his night creatures' allegiance, and have them obey every command of hers. So basically, the Vampire Queen quartet had a Devil Forge master literally at their disposal, and not just anyone, but one who just can't say no to them. But if we dig a little more into her character, what Lenore did not understand was that her acts of manipulation did cause pain to others. To her, Hector was her unwilling pet. But because she regarded him as one, she even began to treat him like a literal one, taking him on walks at night and also guarding him from her vehement peers on the council. Of course, it took her some time to comprehend why Hector was so upset by the fact that she actually tied him with a control ring. Stressing at her powers and abilities, the character of Lenore was more like this apex predator, one that could overpower humans within a blink of an eye, thanks to her elongated teeth making it way easier for her to pierce through the human skin, and those sharp nails that could very smoothly tear through flesh. She possessed immortality, superhuman strength, as well as the power of shapeshifting that allowed her to transform into several small flying bats, as well as this misty body structure. But, like all vampires, she was a creature of darkness. Sadly, no daylight ring for her. Saint Germain. Voiced by the celebrated English actor Bill Nye, the character of Count Saint Germain initially made his debut as a supporting character in the 3rd season. But this mysterious and powerful mage soon ended up becoming the principal villain in the 4th season. Claiming to possess the gift of immortality, the character of Saint Germain widely traveled all around the world, giving advice to a multitude of rulers and dictators that he encountered on the way. In due course, he crossed his paths with a woman that he fell madly in love with. However, in their quest for more knowledge, he lost her in the realms of the gateway between the 2 dimensions. The Infinite Corridor. Of course, Germain did everything he could to look for a way to get reunited with his lover, and it is precisely his search that unavoidably sent him down a very dark path. And for that, the ancient elemental spirit Death, along with his manipulations, is to be blamed.
Thing.
The time approaches. Do you have the forging phrases from Hector?
Well, it was specifically Death who influenced Germain, telling him that he could only reunite with his lover if he was able to help revive the exceedingly powerful Dracula. It is a different thing that Death wanted to resurrect Dracula for his very own selfish motives. And although Saint Germain was tricked into aiding and abetting, his character died without getting what was apparently promised to him. He never got to reunite with his lover.
Witches' things. Of all the witches I've rooted out, none.
The Bishop. People who have seen Castlevania knows that the first place in the villains category will always be a tie between Count Dracula and the Bishop. If you are someone who thought that the villains in this dark medieval fantasy series had to be supernatural to make it to the list, let's stop you right there. This horrifyingly despicable human being is the one that began everything in the first place. It goes without saying that he has his own warped version of the natural order of the world, and everything else was regarded as a threat to his beliefs. Calling him fanatical would be an understatement. He had this unwavering smugness and exceeding misconceptions of grandeur. He always believed himself to be right, no matter what the situation is, and it would not even take him seconds to put the guilt on somebody else. If we go by the true definition of a bishop, the rank is usually given to someone who happens to be an ordained or appointed member in a religious institution entrusted with a position of authority and oversight. But that is certainly not the case with the bishop here in Castlevania.
You will either be gone or be dead. Do you understand?
He is duplicitous, murderous. He is someone who is more than ready to militarize his church and have thieves, murderers, and thugs into his ranks as priest. According to him, Dracula's wife Lisa Tepesh went against his twisted sense of natural order, so he had her burnt at the stake while falsely accusing her of witchcraft. In short, he just wanted to cleanse the whole world of the viewpoints that contradicted his own. He literally went to extreme ends, such as regularly manipulating the people of Gresset into murdering or banishing anyone, for that matter, who dared not to follow his beliefs. He even rallied fierce mobs against them. Later, when he was finally confronted by Dracula, the bishop professed him as an apparition of Satan.
That you are not real. You
was done very strategically because he wanted Dracula's attacks on Wallachia to gain more upper hand and power. With Dracula summoning his army of demons, the bishop put the blame on the people, telling them that this happened solely because they did not obey him or his beliefs. The bishop at the same time thought that he was above blame and that God would protect him. No points for guessing that even God was utterly repulsed by his actions and ended up not protecting him. It was the demon Blue Fangs, who eventually ripped the bishop into shreds.
Murder at the hands of vagabonds and a long dragging behind a wagon is no less than the...
Prior Sala. Initially a thoughtful clergyman, one who has dedicated himself to his parish and the welfare of the citizen, Prior Sala suffered a weighty crisis of faith that left him completely broken. Like numerous other members of the clergy, he was deeply upset to learn that it was Bishop's fanaticalism which led to Dracula's campaign of genocide. Next comes the arrival of a powerful night creature called the Visitor, and it leads to his faith getting further hampered to the extent that there was just no coming back from there. There is something about the character of Sala, be it his ominous presence, his creepy eyes, the fact that he is unsettlingly calm and composed, or that he is always found speaking in an eerie monotone. He usually puts up a show of normalcy, acting as if everything was fine, even if things are just the opposite. But let's not forget that he is alarmingly ecstatic even by the slightest reference of hell. Just the simple fact that he can become completely indifferent towards human matters and letting his priory crumble right in front of him shows how dark he could actually be. While he still believes in God and worships him, you cannot disregard that he was corrupted to the extent that he viewed Dracula as a savior. That's not where it ends. He thinks Dracula as the innocent that was wronged. In fact, he is more than determined to see how Dracula's global act of mass murder would send all the humans to hell.
Dracula sought to reunite us all in hell with his beloved wife.
Well, no one in their sane minds would. Mind you, Prior Sala wasn't really a wizard, but he, along with the monks of his priory, were capable of using magic runes that they had learnt from the dark grimoires, spellbooks, which they read. With a goal to resurrect Dracula, this corrupted cleric here not only had access to demonic powers, but also had the knowledge of the dark sorcery as well as authority over his priory.
The sun is already down.
Blue Fangs. Voiced by the American voice actor Fred Tatasciore, this particular villain here is inevitably famous for his dialogue. We will give you an instance. Blue Fangs appears in the fourth and final episode of the first season, titled Monument.
Lies in your house of God? No wonder he has abandoned you.
In spite of his frightful appearance, this powerful demon possessed a very strong vocabulary, along with a very good grasp on morality. He embraces his sinister nature and simply loathes hypocrisy. He was extremely intelligent, and it shows, when he, unlike the other night creatures, was easily able to see through the bishop's selfish, repulsive act. Everything that was done in the name of God. He knew exactly well that God hated the bishop for his actions, and that is why he entered the church, where he knew the despicable bishop would be to eventually take matters in his own hands. There are more evidences that point out towards his intelligence as well as his understanding of human emotions. With the bishop covering up his actions and stating them as God's work, the character of Blue Fangs is shown to take great pleasure in breaking the bishop's false sense of self-righteousness, right before devouring him, of course. Blue Fangs even gave credit to him because it was due to the actions of the horrifying bishop that he and his night horde were summoned in the first place. Do watch out for Blue Fangs, who is the ultimate savage butcher, especially when it comes to the battle. He finds immense pleasure when it comes to using his sharp teeth and piercing claws to tear apart humans. Gabon and Slagra. The duo made fantastic additions to the frightening terrarium of demons, as well as creatures from the Castlevania video game straight to the Netflix adaptation. When it comes to Gabon, he appeared as a fire-breathing flying gargoyle. Slagra, on the other hand, was a demonic knight that looked more like a skeletal pterosaur in possession of a spear. The duo was often seen together, and since Slagra was bound to the ground, he was more than often picked up by Gabon as a means to attack the enemy. Both the demons met their respective ends at the hands of Trevor B. Gabon had his head pierced with his whip, and Slagra was killed via his own spear. Fans of the Castlevania video game series can only wish that they were given more screen time. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.